Is it really the end of the world that the Steam machine only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM? How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. I took a whole YouTube class on lighting, so I think I improved it from the baseline that I started with based on your comments, so thank you. I'm learning new things every day. Speaking of learning new things though, since the Steam machine was announced, I mean 99% of the info about it that's come out sounds excellent. The LED light bar, awesome. The fact that JSOX is working to get an e-ink display like the one in the Valve videos, excellent. Love that. The fact that it's like 6 inches tall, but 60% of it is the heatsink, so they're gonna have really good cooling in it. Chef's kiss. Like, no complaints there about anything. But there's one factor with the Steam machine that everyone, whether they're a PS5 fan, an Xbox Series X fan, even a Steam Deck fan, have latched onto, myself included, and that's that it only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. The reason that stands out to so many people is because if you've watched Digital Foundry, Gamers Nexus, Linus Tech Tips at all over the past like 2 to 4 years, you've definitely heard complaints about 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I think it comes up most on Digital Foundry because Alex is really good at pushing out PC videos. For basically every big game that comes out, he gives you optimized settings and sometimes even tells you the baseline that the consoles are running at. And consistently, having 8 gigabytes of VRAM is an issue that causes things like stuttering, frame drops, and all the common problems we have with games, whether you're on console or PC these days. So when I was trying to figure out what kind of video to make, I had two paths in front of me. Of course, I could go to Micro Center, Amazon, Best Buy, wherever, and try to find a PC that's roughly equivalent to what the Steam machine's going to have. I could install SteamOS on it, but I'm not really sure how much that would actually provide in terms of quality content because I'm not really good at stuff like that. Like, I can install SteamOS, I can show you games running, but like, I don't need to be telling you about it because that's a pretty cut and dry type video. And I'm sure there's other channels who have done that with no commentary out there. The Fox also did a great breakdown of this. ETA Prime, like at the recording of this video, has already built 2 Steam machines. So I didn't want to make videos that have already been made. So what I landed on is making a video that's like how I run this channel, which is, you know, from the perspective of someone who plays a lot of video games. I don't just make videos about the Steam Deck and then put it down and then go do other stuff. I play video games. I play multiplayer stuff like Hunt Showdown 1896, Arc Raiders, Battlefield 6. I play single player stuff like I just got Silent Hill F. I just ran through Dying Light and Dying Light the Following. I got Dying Light the Beast loaded on my SteamOS PC. Like, I play a lot of video games across a bunch of different devices. So I want to break this down in, I don't want to say layman's terms, but like just normal person terms as to why 8 gigabytes of VRAM is not enough. Now, to jump into this, if the Steam machine came out tomorrow, which it basically is, in the grand scheme of things, it's coming out in early 2026. The landscape's not going to shift that much in the next like 2 to 3 months. I would tell you that 8 gigabytes of VRAM is enough for 99% of the games out there. You know, the list of games that have issues grows seemingly every month, but it's a pretty small list compared to the vast amount of games that are on Steam. And then you throw in emulation and everything else. You could buy a PC with 8 gigabytes of VRAM and still have enough games that you've never played to chew through till the rest of your life. Like, till the time when you can no longer play video games, you will be satisfied, I'm positive. But as time goes on, it's undeniable that, you know, 8 gigabytes really does hold certain games back. So I tried to like get a list together of games that have issues, and I think you're going to see a pattern once I start listing them off. So the first one that has issues with 8 gigabytes of VRAM is Metal Gear Solid Delta. If you want to run this at 1080p or 1440p at high texture settings and high everything else settings, you're going to have a rough time. You're going to be limiting it to 30 FPS. You're going to see a little bit of stuttering when things load in. It's not going to be amazing, but it's definitely going to be playable. Another game you're going to run into some issues with is Jedi Survivor. This game is a notorious VRAM hog. Like, if you're running it above medium settings without DLSS or FSR, good luck. You're going to see a lot of frame drops. You're going to see a lot of stuttering. This game famously has a memory leak, so the longer you play it, the more it's going to eat up your VRAM, and the performance is going to steadily degrade the longer you play it. And for me, the way I got around it was restarting the game once every 2 hours. So I would set a timer on my phone, and then when it went off, I'd restart the game. It was not an optimal way to play it, but that's how I got through it. Another game that causes problems is Hogwarts Legacy. If you run this at the high or ultra spec, or, you know, you turn on ray tracing, you're going to be at 30 or or 40 FPS. You might be able to stick to the high 50s, but you're still going to see stuttering. You're still going to see frame drops. It's going to be a bad time. The two latest games published by Bethesda or published by Xbox through Bethesda would be Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages. They're both going to have issues with 8 gigabytes of VRAM because they both require you to have ray tracing on at all times, which definitely eats into the VRAM of your GPU. Silent Hill 2 Remake, Silent Hill F, Mafia: The Old Country, all of these games are going to run into the exact same problems. If you run them at higher settings and higher resolutions, you're going to run into some issues when you're using a card with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. There's really no way around it. There's definitely more games I could list, but the point I want to make here is all of those games have one thing in common, and it's not necessarily the fact that they use Unreal Engine 5. It's not necessarily the fact that they all are VRAM hogs. The thing that they have in common is that they're all horribly optimized games where developers pushed them out early and then spent months or even years, in the case of Jedi Survivor, pushing out tiny little patches that said they improved things, but at the end of the day, here we are years after most of them came out and their major issues are seemingly never going to be fixed. So the situation it presents is kind of interesting because you can brute force your way past a lot of those issues. Like my PC upstairs with a 9800 X3D and 9070 XT, it eats these games for lunch, right? Like I run them at medium high settings, I play at 1440p native, or I go up to 4K and turn on FSR 4, set it to quality. It has no issues, you know, outside of a little bit of micro stutter when things are loading in the Unreal Engine 5 games. And if you were trying to figure this stuff out on Reddit, or you were watching some of these videos on YouTube, they would make it seem like that's the only option you have when it comes to PC. Everyone's got a 9070 XT. Everyone's got a 5080 or 5090. At the very least, everyone has a 4090 because, you know, the 50 series are out, so the 40 series are dropping in price just a little bit. But if you look at the Steam hardware survey, that is nowhere near the truth. If you look at the Steam hardware survey and look at the VRAM percentages of people using Steam, if you look at the higher ones like 10, 12, 16 gigabytes of VRAM, they're splintered, they're fragmented, they're super low percentages. But you'll see one number really stand out, and that's 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Over 30% of the people on Steam with a GPU, which I hope everyone has, you know, a dedicated GPU if you're playing on Steam, 30% of those people are using 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So it leads me to believe that in the YouTube space, perspectives are kind of warped, right? Like I worked for Austin Evans for a while and GPUs were coming through the door all the time. So when you have a resource like that, which is either sponsored videos or, you know, companies reaching out and sending you graphics cards left and right, it's pretty easy to get kind of caught up in it and start to think that, you know, there's so many graphics cards out there, most people are probably going for above console spec, because why else would you play on PC other than to beat consoles? And that's where the disconnect really presents itself, and I kind of get where it comes from, or I really get where it comes from, right? Like when Windows was the only option, or, you know, you could get an Xbox or a PS5 or a Nintendo console, there was a big reason to not use Windows, right? Like the plug and play simplicity of using a console, the fact that you can turn it on and your TV with a controller, it downloads games right to it, it patches them while it's in rest mode, it updates the games for you, it even updates the console for you, it gives you a storefront with regular sales and everything like that. The ease of use situation, specifically when playing on a TV and kind of in general between consoles and Windows, the gulf was massive, right? Like you would get a console for ease of use, and if you wanted to tinker, play around, or, you know, mess with settings and try to get the best performance possible out of a game, or, you know, play a first-person shooter with a mouse and keyboard, PC was sitting there for you. But now we have SteamOS with 3 years of boutique patching that has made it the greatest gaming operating system I have ever used, bar none. I use it on my Steam Deck, I use it on my Legion OS, I use it upstairs on that PC I was just talking about. It solves every problem I ever had with Windows. I can navigate the entire thing with the controller, I can add Discord and run it in the background, and then use a controller profile through Steam Input to like move the mouse around and get into chats with my friends and run it in the background while I'm playing another game. I can put the PC in sleep mode and turn it back on with my controller. For all intents and purposes, if I want it to work like a console, it can work like a console. If I want to head into desktop mode and get on the internet, watch a movie, play some music, do anything that you can do on a PC, it says go right ahead. And it doesn't force me to use Steam like the PS5 uses the PlayStation Store or the Xbox uses the Xbox Store and Xbox app. If I want to install Heroic Launcher and get Epic Game Store games or GOG games set up, Valve just rolls out the red carpet for every storefront out there except for the Xbox Store, which is on Microsoft. They don't want to port it over to Linux, probably because they're trying to compete compete directly with Valve now with their next generation Xbox. More power to them. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is a lot of people enjoy that experience. So that's a huge reason why I think a lot of people who are budget minded or budget friendly are looking at playing on PC over a console, even if they have to suffer with an 8GB GPU. And I'm using suffer extremely sarcastically because clearly it works fine if that many people are using 8GB GPUs, like that big of a percentage of the Steam hardware survey. I get why it's something worth talking about because here I am sitting in front of my camera talking about it, and so is everyone else, but I don't think it's as big of an issue as it's being made out to be. And out of all those games I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think the only two you're actually going to consider unplayable on the Steam machine would be Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages, because they require a lot of overhead from your GPU even without the forced ray tracing, which you can't turn off. And with the ray tracing on, they're just like not really worth playing. They're going to stutter, they're going to have frame drops, you're going to have to use the absolute dirt lowest settings, and it's just, I don't think it's going to be a good experience overall. But the rest of those games, Jedi Survivor, Hogwarts Legacy, the other ones I mentioned that I forgot, oh, Metal Gear Solid Delta, I think if you just lower the settings to medium or low, you're going to be just fine, either at 40 FPS with the frame limiter. Most TVs are 120 Hertz, so that'll look great. You can play at 30 FPS or even 60 in some of these games. If you want to set your TV's resolution through SteamOS to 1440p, that's the new ceiling that upscaling will work with, and then you'll go even lower using balanced or quality mode. So you have a lot of choice, a lot of options. But the idea that the only reason people play on PC is because of the PC master race meme, right? Like to defeat consoles and get settings that they could never even dream of is kind of crazy, and I just don't think it's realistic, right? Like there are people out there who are willing and able to just throw down $2,000 or $3,000 on an amazing pre-built or build their own amazing PC that's gonna do exactly what I just said. But in reality, with provable data that's verified because it's coming directly from Valve, who gets their data from people who use Steam, the vast majority of people out there are not in that situation and don't really care to be, right? Like they could go for a little bit better of a graphics card, but they're fine in the 3060, 4060, 4060 Ti range, and I think that those cards max out at like 10 gigabytes. And the best part about all of this is that if you're watching this channel, you probably have a Steam Deck and you know exactly how to deal with any problem you're going to run into with the Steam machine. I just think you're going to run into these problems that we run into on the Steam Deck a lot less often because like on top of, you know, the VRAM issues that the Steam Deck might have, it also can't do ray tracing. Like theoretically it can do ray tracing, but no matter what game you turn it on in, good luck getting over 20 FPS if you're using ray tracing. I know people love using lossless scaling to double the FPS, but the input lag that's introduced when you're doubling 20 to 40 or 30 to 60, it's just too much for me. So ray tracing is effectively off the table if you're on Steam Deck, but with 6 times the GPU power, which is what you're going to find in the Steam machine, you're going to have a lot bigger of a window to play around in to figure out what exact settings you can leave at high, medium, low, or otherwise. So when it comes to criticizing this, it's definitely fair to criticize 8 gigabytes of VRAM in 2025, but I also think it's really one of the only things we can criticize right now. Like the price hasn't been announced. We haven't seen a ton of footage of games running on it. They did show some good demos with games like Silent Hill F and Cyberpunk 2077, so that set the table pretty nicely for good performance. But right now, and I think at launch, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I know this is going to be hammered by a lot of YouTubers when the thing comes out. They're going to have a list of games that like have problems on 8 gigabytes of VRAM ready to go so they can complain. I'm not going to do that. I don't really care. I think I understand what games this is good for, and I have a backup option, so that's nice. But when we get into 2026, 2027, when we get the Magnus Xbox console, when we get the PS6, I think that's when this will start to be a little bit more of a problem. When ray tracing gets a little bit more performant, it starts being forced in more games because it's the default lighting solution. I think that's when you're really going to see the Steam machine start to fall behind. But even then, I'm positive people will figure out ways around it, whether it's through mods, whether it's through boutique Proton updates. I'm confident in that because I've had the Steam Deck for over 3 years, and every time it seems like there's no hope to get a game up and running perfectly fine on the Steam Deck, someone goes through the effort and figures it out. Like so many games are fun to go back to that didn't run right when the Steam Deck came out, and then you magically discover now they do, and it's awesome. So yeah, is 8 gigabytes the end of the world for the Steam machine? No, I think it's pretty definitive and easy to say that it isn't. Is it going to be a problem as time goes on? Yes, but like every piece of hardware that comes out, whether it's a PS5, an Xbox, A Steam Deck, a Legion OS, an ROG Ally, that's the exact same situation they're all in. They're going to be good or great at launch, and as games get harder to run and have newer technologies, they're going to get worse as time goes on, and then eventually there will be a Steam Machine 2 where everything is solved and everything looks and runs great because it's mid-grade hardware for whatever year it comes out. It's the exact same situation we're in with the Steam Deck right now. So yeah, that's my take on it. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know down in the comments below. Again, I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. It would really help me out if you subscribed. So subscribe, set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.